We're now officially live. All right, Robert, we can wave to the camera. Say, hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
Hi. Hi,
Hey,
everyone.
friends. How are you? Happy FRI. Grateful to be sitting here with Robert Tudor. Rob, we go way back. It's been great to learn and listen and collaborate with you in the fire service over the years. For those of us that maybe don't know you, give us a little background on you, Viero, and give me the little 40,000 foot view on Robert.
Okay, well, I've been in the fire service for a really long time. My father was a charter member of the Louisville Volunteer Fire Department in North Carolina when it was chartered back in 1958. And I've been hanging around fire stations ever since. Later became a member of that volunteer fire department. And then I had a job offer to go to work for the Charlotte Fire Department. And I did 24 years there and retired 12 years ago. In my tenure at the Charlotte Fire Department, the entire time I was a health and safety officer. And half of that time I was also the logistics officer. So that kept me quite busy. And in 1990, as in my role and the jobs I had to do in Charlotte, I was thirsty for more information. And I heard about an organization on the West Coast called SAFER. And then they also had NAFER and CAFER. And so we started an organization, a group of people I knew called FIERO, Fire Industry Education Resource Organization. And we started networking, talking about fire equipment, health and safety issues in the fire service. And then as communications got a lot simpler and we started communicating more, we came up with an idea, well, let's sort of reinvent ourselves. And what can we offer that you can't find anywhere else? And one of the first things was, where do you go to learn about fire station design? Nowhere. So we created the first fire station design symposium 25 years ago. And then back about, let's see, 2006, about 10, 15 years ago, we started our PPE symposium. So in a nutshell, that's my background. I've been heavily involved ever since.
What is it about the fire service that you love?
The people. I think they're the greatest people in the world. And it's such a fascinating business. I mean, we've got all the cool stuff and the best stories to share. And I think it's just a great environment to be involved.
I would have to agree. Working in the fire service and collaborating with firefighters brings me great joy. And I think there's something about this idea of how firefighters are truly the most selfless people and that they're risking their lives on a daily basis to save strangers.
Yes, yeah. And it's remarkable the things we can accomplish when we set our minds to it.
Yeah. So you mentioned station design. I think maybe some people on the surface they think I don't know it's a roof. The firefighters hang out in the bunk room. You've got a kitchen. You got a spot to store your truck. But there's obviously a lot of intricacies and nuances with that. What is it about station design that what are maybe some of the challenges of station design, but more so what's the focus on how to make sure that we're designing the right station for the future of the fire service?
Well, that's quite a challenge because I don't think we've ever had a clear picture of our future. When you look at fire stations in service today, probably well over 80% of them are basically obsolete. And if I may, let's look back at fire stations. It wasn't that long ago that a fire station was considered just a garage, and maybe it had a kitchen attached to it and a bedroom. And when I was working with the Charlotte Fire Department, my responsibility was to equip new fire stations. It wasn't the job of the architect. And we were a fast growing city. We were opening a new fire station or totally renovating a station on average of one a year. And it seemed like every time we did it was the first time we'd ever done it. And so that's one of the reasons FIERO got started in fire stations. As we look back, we had just sort of got through dealing with the gender issues, which was non-existent when a lot of stations were formed. And then we started getting into fitness and wellness. And one of the challenges I had was to try to figure out where to put our fitness equipment in a fire station, an existing station. Because there was not a room planned for it. And some of the stations we would add on a room, but a lot of them it ended up being in the apparatus bay, which is not a healthy place for that. Then you keep going. I think the biggest thing in my mind that's in fire stations is the emergence of the contamination issue in recent years. And how do you manage contamination? Have a architect who's now retired who had a saying that I think really resonates. He said, firefighters are like farmers. Farmers go out in the field, they harvest their crops, they put them on a tractor or a wagon or a truck or something, and they bring them back to the station or back to the barn and store them in the barn. And firefighters go to the fire ground, they harvest carcinogens and other bad things that are harmful to your health, and they put them in the fire truck and they bring them back to the station where they store them or they distribute them. Sometimes even those contaminants get to the homes of the firefighters and in their personal vehicles. So that has been probably the biggest challenge. And now, more recently, we're hearing about things about the holistic design of a fire station. And we're looking at behavioral issues among firefighters and how can you address that? And fire station design can go a long way to address that, even just the colors that are used, the use of natural light, things like that.
A lot of the things I think people don't really think about.
No. When people come to our fire station symposiums, the comment we hear most frequently when it's over with is, wow, I would have never thought of that, because you don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
So you mentioned also the PPE, and I want to get to that in a second, but maybe even the overlap of PPE and the station, but with the compartmentalization of equipment at the station, of where to put gear when it's done, how to properly where to install the cleaning equipment, where to install the showers, where to install, and again, you mentioned the gender conversation, having 2 sets of bathrooms, all these things. Like, tell me about some of the other thinking and methodology that goes into ensuring that the fire station is designed to set the firefighters up for success, to ensure that firefighters are going to have the healthiest and safest and clean environment.
Right. And I think the thing that immediately comes to mind is sleep deprivation. I think we're just now learning about that and the adverse health effects that sleep deprivation has on firefighters. A lot of studies been done on it, a lot of ongoing studies, and what we're learning is very scary. And so that automatically leads to, okay, what's the best way to alert firefighters if they've got an alarm when they're asleep? We don't need a loud blast and the lights all come on and you're blinded. And, so the more effective systems seem to be the ones where you've got a gradual ramp up in both the light and the sound of what you're hearing. And then the big discussion going on is the sleeping quarters. Is it open dorm? Is it partitions in an open dorm, individual bedrooms? And been involved in those discussions just in the last couple of days and hearing opinions that, there's several sides to it and what works best. Just had a discussion with a fire chief just a couple of hours ago, and they had gone to individual bedrooms where you can control the noise, you can control the environment, but they're real small bedrooms, very tiny bedrooms, just room enough for the bed and room enough to change clothes and a small nightstand. The objective is you want a great place for people to sleep, but you don't want that to be a place where they go and hide when they're not sleeping, because the camaraderie, the culture, the team building, all of that takes place, I think, without argument around the kitchen table and in the day room. So that's where we want firefighters to spend their time.
And then, you mentioned the sleep conversation. I know Dr. Sarah Jonke's talked a lot about this in terms of one of the biggest indicators of poor health is bad sleep. And so how they create this best sleep environment, you touched on that. But as well as kind of like from the conversation of overall health and wellness and cancer prevention, particularly with carcinogens and different carcinogens on the PPE. Tell me more about kind of the station design and how a station designs evolved over time to best support firefighters with not necessarily being able to get their gear as clean as possible, keeping the gear away from the firefighters when they don't need it. How has that evolved, and where are we at today with that?
Yeah, there's a lot to that thought process. One of the presentations we have annually is how to build a proper decon laundry in a fire station. Air quality management is a huge issue, and we've actually got some air quality monitoring going on in some fire stations in the Triangle area of North Carolina under the direction of Dr. Heather Stapleton with Duke University. So air quality is certainly very important. We've heard about diesel exhaust emission through the years. Source capture is very important. And I think redundancy in air cleaning is very important. I think in addition to source capture, you need something in that station that's cleaning and scrubbing that air on a regular basis, because almost all of the equipment that we have on our truck is off-gassing to a certain degree. And some of the things we're seeing is it's hard for existing stations to accommodate some of those things. In fact, there are at least 2 stations I know of where they've built a separate facility out behind their station where they can bring the truck in, take the equipment off of it, and clean it, including the PPE. So that's quite a challenge. The other thing is, if you've got the space and you're designing a new station, is to store your PPE off the apparatus floor into its own room with a self-ventilation, motion sensor lights, and the ventilation takes that air out of the station. And I can't understate how important storage is, because light will degrade PPE, so it needs to be in a dark environment. Storing it on the apparatus bay, not only it's just, if you can avoid it, but sometimes you can't.
And I know I was looking at some of the poster boards that you had outside, and it was showing some of the different posters, and it was looking at these different stations that have been completely rebuilt, some of them retrofitted. I saw even some of the ones like in New York, where again, you don't have the luxury of completely rebuilding a station, and you're kind of dealing with historic buildings. And it's this idea of retrofitting and taking something that is however many years old and ultimately bringing it up to life and bringing it to speed. What are some tips and tricks and low-hanging fruit for retrofitting without necessarily building a brand new station up to the latest and greatest, but what are any success stories and examples of how retrofitting can really improve station design?
Now, one of the courses that we have at our event every year it's called Renovate or Knock It Down. Renovation is quite a challenge, but that doesn't mean you can't renovate. You may not get something, you won't get something as perfect as being able to build a new station. But looking at sort of some of the extremes, I was talking to a guy earlier today that they've actually were able to take an existing fire station and add a floor to it. Not only adding it on the top, but there have been cases where they've been able to dig a basement and add a floor below. And the wildest thing I heard was they took a station and they raised, it was a 2-story station. They raised the top floor, built another floor between them like a sandwich, and made that work. So there are a lot of things you can do. I know one architect in particular did a study of several Philadelphia fire stations. And what some of these architects can do with an existing station is amazing. Maybe you've got to take out a wall. Maybe you don't have room for this, but they can reconfigure in some pretty amazing ways. And one of the things that they said, well, you don't have a space for a decon room or a cleaning room. Well, think outside the box a little bit. I know here in Florida, there are at least 1 or 2 departments where if they have a fire, there's a unit that comes to the scene and gathers up all that dirty equipment and takes it somewhere and cleans it. That dirty equipment never goes back to the station, because when they come to get it and clean it, they leave them clean replacement gear and clean hose and clean SCBA. And so sometimes you need to approach it that way. There are even some, in fact, there's on the show floor today, I was looking at a mobile unit that it's a company can take a washer extractors and clean it around to your station. So you may have to, your cleaning may be portable. You may have to bring it to your station to clean and take it somewhere else and store it. And maybe that portable unit serves several stations. So there's a lot of ways to approach that, but a major renovation is a challenge. And Kevin, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because our group is already talking today about next year. We're thinking about having a track just on renovations, because probably every station that, unless it's been built in the last 4 or 5 years, needs some degree of renovation to it. And the big question on that renovation too, you need to keep in mind, can it be renovated while we still operate out of that station?
Mm.
Or are we going to have to move out? And if we move out, do we relocate? Where I come from in Charlotte, we renovated a station. We would typically move the engine company to a nearby station. There would be 2 companies responding out of that station where maybe it was just one. The other situation is, and there's a company on the display floor now that provides temporary stations. And they've really got they can set you up a temporary station in like 48 hours. And they'll do this like for disaster management. If you have a station wiped out in a tornado or something like Hurricane Helene, they can get you a temporary station up and running in about 48 hours.
Wow, that's amazing. And you mentioned, I mean, Fiero is leading a lot of educational thought leadership in these 2 topics of station design and PPE. And I know you host some events throughout the year. Tell me about the station design and PPE work that you got going on in the next next calendar year. What are the events coming up, and how can people get involved? Tell me more.
Yes, we have our annual Fire Station Design Symposium coming up next month. I think it's the 21st through the 24th. I may be off on that. The early bird registration deadline ends at the end of this month, end of August. So you can save $100 if you can get registered by then. You can register by going to FIEROonline.org, FIEROLINE.org, and click there. You'll find the events. Our PPE symposium comes up in February. It's the very last week in February, and the registration's open for that. And both of these events are held at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in beautiful downtown Greenville, South Carolina. If you've never been there, you ought to go. It's a fabulous downtown area. And I will say our registration fee, it includes meals and a resource manual that we give you. And so we think it's a great value. And keep in mind about Fiero, I didn't mention this. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our board of directors all have a fire service background, and almost all of the staff work that's done is volunteer.
It's amazing, Rob, what you've continued to build and lead. And I have not been been to the show yet. And it sounds like a good opportunity for my wife and son to take a little trip and enjoy ourselves at the PPE conference.
You will. I guarantee you will enjoy yourselves. And people that leave, the phrase we like to use, that was time and money well spent.
Well done. Well said. Well, I guess I have one final question for you, and this is maybe somewhat related, but just kind of curious if you have any favorite quote or words of wisdom or any sort of like final insight that you could leave us with here today.
Don't make critical decisions related to fire station and design, and don't make critical decisions about your PPE until you're well informed. And what we try to do is offer information in a non-commercial environment, and I don't want to disparage people that sell equipment out there, but it's good to hear more about what you're getting ready to do than just from one sales rep.
Well said, Robert.
Yeah, get informed.
Get informed.
Make an informed decision. And the one thing we offer is a chance to network with people. I think there's so much value in in-person events because of the networking.
Yeah. Well, Robert, thank you for all that you do for the fire service. Excited to continue to collaborate and work with you. And until next time.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.